See, here we discuss how polymerization takes place, the basic reactions through which polymerization occurs. So here we say polymerization polymerization occurs by two methods. The first one here is called addition polymerization. Addition polymerization. This is also called chain growth polymerization. This is also referred to as chain growth polymerization. Right? And here we say that normally the polymerization occurs by addition reaction, and the second category is like your condensation polymerization. This is also called step growth polymerization. All right, so basically we will be discussing these two methods in detail, and we would also take up some examples in each category. So when we say addition or chain growth polymerization, the first thing we have to know is like monomers which are either same or of different types. They undergo addition reaction to make a polymer. So as the name tells you, the monomers have to undergo addition reaction, right? The second important point, monomers, because they undergo addition reaction, and you know that addition reactions are generally shown by those compounds which are unsaturated. So here monomers are unsaturated, and thus they are compounds like alkenes. Let me put it properly here. Alkenes or alkadines, right? Alkadines would be like alkenes, with two double bonds, so basically dienes, right? Again, what is the speciality here? Here we find that the entire process of polymerization takes place in stages. So it involves, this kind of reaction involves large number of intermediate stages, and each stage involves a reactive intermediate like a cation, anion, or a free radical, right? So each intermediate stage involves either a cation, anion, or a free radical. So basically the polymeric chain would grow in stages, right? And every stage addition takes place, and at every stage, right, your chain, the polymeric chain which is growing, would generally act as either a cation or an anion or a free radical. So basically the polymeric chain is in form of a cation or an anion or a free radical. However, in this chapter, And for most of the polymers, the mechanism which is ideally followed is free radical addition. So ideally, most of the addition reactions that we see with polymers, they involve free radicals as intermediates, and so the process is called free radical addition reaction. Now, you have to know that the mechanism, right, of free radical addition is to be understood, and it takes place in about 3 stages. So, the next that we do is the mechanism of free radical addition reaction. So as I've told you, that mechanism of free radical addition involves 3 basic steps: initiation, propagation, and termination. Let us start with the first step, which is like our initiation step, right? So how do we initiate a free radical addition reaction? All right, let me put this. Okay, initiation. So you have to know that normally we have to generate a free radical, and in order to make a free radical, we have to use a free radical initiator. So for initiating a free radical addition reaction, we will have to use something which initiates the reaction, something which can generate free radicals. So here, benzoyl peroxide or any other peroxide is used as initiator, right? Okay, your benzoyl peroxide would be something like this. Your benzoyl peroxide, when you expose this to light, when you expose this to light, right, UV light, it breaks down. There is decomposition taking place. And this decomposition would lead to formation of, phenyl free radicals. So there are some phenyl free radicals generated. So it forms phenyl free radicals. Now, phenyl free radicals actually interact with our monomer, and it can further, initiate the actual reaction. So let me first of all put it here. Now, for simplicity, we would be taking up formation of polyethene. So the monomer here will be ethene molecule, and we would be talking more about how polyethene gets formed from ethene, right? So first of all, let us take up the reaction. Benzoyl peroxide looks like this: C6H5, C double bond O, O, OC double bond O, and C6H5. This is benzoyl peroxide, and this is the weakest bond that you have here. And when you use UV radiation here and heat it a little, right, you will have homolytic fission taking place here. 1 electron moves here and 1 electron moves here. Oxygen single bond undergoes homolytic fission. So here I can put it up that there is this homolytic fission. This homolytic fission would lead to C6H5, C double bond O, and O free radical, 2 of them. Now this would further, this benzoyl free radical or is, the free radical which is formed here, right, that can further, this is not exactly a benzoyl free radical, this is actually a benzoate free radical. So what we can do is like this would further undergo loss of carbon dioxide. So we can have 1 electron going here, 1 electron going here from the bond, and 1 electron going here. So basically this bond undergoes homolytic fission, and you can have one electron going here, and one electron from this bond moves here to form a double bond, and one electron, the second electron, would move on to carbon. This would lead to formation of two phenyl free radicals now and two CO2 molecules. So finally we have phenyl free radicals formed here, right? And these phenyl free radicals are now going to, interact with they're going to interact with ethene monomers, and they're going to actually generate generate the free radicals, which would further form the polymer. So let me put this all together. Now, here the phenyl free radical starts interacting with ethene. Ethene is like this. The pi bond, which is very, very weak, would undergo homolytic fission. One electron goes here and one electron goes here. Now you find that the two electrons, one on the carbon and one on this carbon, they would make a bond. And so what we get here is C6H5CH2 CH2 free radical, right? This is what we get here. C6H5 CH2 CH2. This is a carbon free radical. This is a carbon free radical, right? And this carbon free radical eventually now starts forming the actual polymeric chain. So, after initiation, we have a carbon free radical generated, and this carbon free radical will eventually start the chain reaction. So this is the initiation part, which is done. Now we would slowly move towards the propagation part, right? First step is done. So the first step is like initiation. You can very easily go through it. And the next would be now propagation. So now here we have the second step, propagation. Now just remember this. This is our initially formed free radical, right? And this was formed when phenyl free radical, which was obtained by decomposition of benzoyl peroxide, that phenyl free radical interacted with one of the ethene monomers to generate a kind of free radical, which eventually now gets involved in propagating the chain. So this starts now interacting with the ethene molecules one by one. And you can see that when first ethene molecule interacts with here, so you can see that the pi bond once again undergoes homolytic fission. Homolytic fission would have when this fission occurs, this carbon would get one electron and this carbon would also get one electron. So the carbon here with one electron and the carbon here with one electron would make a bond, a covalent bond, and so you can have the second monomer getting attached to the first monomer. And you can see that this is the stage 2, and again in this stage a new free radical is generated. Remember the definition, it takes place in stages, and every stage involves a reactive intermediate. Here the reactive intermediate is a free radical. Now this keeps on happening, right? So there are n number of stages involved, so n times, and eventually you will have a huge long chain in which you will have NCH2s, and eventually you will have a free radical formed here, right? So this keeps on getting added on to more and more ethene monomers, and finally you get a big polymer, big polymeric chain, which also has a kind of one of the carbons bearing that unpaired electron, and this big polymeric chain still remains in intermediate form. Right? Now we move on to the third step, which is called the chain terminating step. Let us understand how finally the chain terminates. Let us talk about the termination step now. In termination, we will have two free radicals combined. See, normally in any such free radical reaction, the last step, the terminating step, would be when the free radicals, they start combining with each other. So here you find that when two big, you remember this, big chain which was formed before, right? This was the long chain which was formed in the propagation step. Now the two such reactive free radicals, they combine, and when they combine, they give you a big long chain of polymers, a big long polymeric chain, and this chain would then be like your actual polymer. You can see that there is this CH2 n times. So this is the termination step, and this is what we call as polyethene. This is your polyethene which is formed, and this is how the termination takes place. I would not be talking about what byproducts you have here because not needed as of now, but you do find that even in termination you have a lot of byproduct formation taking place. But this is your major reaction, and this is this long polymeric chain which is formed at the end of the reaction, right? So 3 steps, I hope you've understood all 3 of them.